there is this idea that maybe the Cowboys do have, if not the best defense in the NFL, a top 5 defense. And though over the last couple of years with, say, like Patrick Mahomes and Matt Stafford with Cooper Kupp, et cetera, we've always looked at quarterbacks and hotshot wide receivers as sort of the starting point for Super Bowl conversations. And for the most part, that's a fairly good strategy to take. However, every now and again, there is a year where a defense just goes nuts. Think of the Denver Broncos when Peyton Manning, was 50 years old or whatever he was. And, he was sort of there in a sort of legends capacity. But it was that defense that really won the Super Bowl for the Broncos. There have been other years where it was the defense carrying them. More often than not, it's a quarterback. But there is that occasional year when the defense is what does it. And I wonder if maybe if you believe that the Cowboys have a path to winning the Super Bowl, then I believe that path has to include a year where defense reigns supreme. And the Cowboys could very well be a part of that conversation. And as Aaron Schatz brought up, rightfully so, it's also why the Bills are somewhat of a trendy pick and why they're fifth on this list. Because we kind of forget, Josh Allen, there's volatility there. Yeah, the whole thing was 7, whatever. But this defense should be fairly legit. And maybe it's the defense that carries the Bills, or maybe it's the defense that carries the Cowboys.
A couple teams that I've talked about a lot, we write about in the book, definitely, that we're high on compared to the market. Dallas and Atlanta for very different reasons. Dallas is a very, very good team that people underrate because of bad playoff performance. And the fact is you learn more from the regular season, a lot more from the regular season than you do from a bad playoff performance. And this is a team that has been one of the top teams in the league for the last 2 regular seasons and a very well-balanced team between offense and defense. And so we have Dallas actually projected with the most mean wins in the league in our simulation. We simulate the season 50,000 times. We get a range of possibilities. We have them ahead of Philadelphia, although we do have Philadelphia still as the 3rd best team in the NFC. We do think they're going to take a little bit of a step back on defense because they improved so much last year. Now, Atlanta is different. It's not that Atlanta is a good team. It's that Atlanta is an average team, and people tend to think that they're a bad team. There's a lot of reason to believe that Atlanta's defense is going to improve this year. They added a lot of talent on that side of the ball. If they can have an offense that's just a little bit below average, that would make them an average team overall, and they have a very easy schedule. New Orleans and Atlanta are very similar in this way. They have the 2 easiest schedules in the league with a big gap between those 2 teams and everyone else. The difference is people realize it about New Orleans. They don't realize it about Atlanta, which is why Atlanta has longer odds. And in most of the markets, Atlanta is like at 8.5 wins, whereas New Orleans is at 9.5. So I really like the over Atlanta 8.5 bet for this preseason. I will shock you with the team that comes out with the worst record most often in our projections. It is the Chicago Bears, believe it or not. Their defense looks lousy. And their offense is depending on Justin Fields to really improve. Like, he's going to improve, but really improve. Like, the idea of Justin Fields as an MVP candidate is, I think, crazy. Because to be an MVP candidate, like, he would have to be an above average passer, above average. Like, he's such a good runner that maybe he would be an MVP candidate, even if he was only a little bit above average. Do you want to know how many quarterbacks in the last 40 years have gone from being as bad passers as Fields was in his first 2 years to anything above average in year 3? One guy, Jeff George in 1993. So while Fields will improve, it's hard to believe that he will improve that much, enough to lift the Chicago defense and have Chicago get over 7.5 wins. And in fact, we have them as the most likely team to get the number 1 pick, not counting the trade that Arizona made, right? Because Arizona has their own number 1 pick and Houston's number 1 pick. So Arizona actually gets the number 1 pick 25% of the time in our simulations, but they actually get it from Houston more often than they get it from themselves.
I may have to change my tune on this. And I get it's just one preseason game, but those I very much respect in the business believe that Bennett could be the type who, if things break a certain way, could be the starting quarterback for the Rams after Matt Stafford, however long that lasts. And if that's the case, then he's serviceable enough with Cooper Kupp and, improved weapons around him. Because, yeah, it's going to take some time for the Rams to build everything back up. But by that point, maybe Bennett is the guy, and maybe we should give him at least a chance to do that. I will say this, those who have looked at this Georgia offense that Stetson Bennett led for a couple of years, a lot of it involved quarterback decision-making. I get he is a little bit older and a little bit shorter, but he is a fantastic athlete. And what he has between the ears could rival a lot of rookie quarterbacks. So, you know what? Let's give him a shot. Let's go.
I'm going to do a let's go as well. There is value on the Rams to win the division. Now, I know they would have to leapfrog our Seahawks.
Show's over. I'm leaving.
That's it.
10-1? If anyone can get Stetson Bennett going, it's Sean McVay. This guy thought about retiring. He decided to continue coaching. He's going to be invested. He's going to be like, you know what? I could have been hanging at home with my wife and my baby, but no, I'm here. I am going to make something of this season.
The best way to beat burnout is to double down on exhaustion. Love it.
Yes.
So do we have infomercials we can play now because we're a Stetson Bennett show?
Clip it.
Well, I think just you and me.
Saying we are a Stetson Bennett show.
It's one of those deals where skill sets are different in terms of being a head coach or being a front office executive, whatever it is. And the evaluation side, picking the right guy, a lot of that can be very random. You can be an absolute genius in terms of once you have a quarterback, you know how to pick apart a defense, you know how to use a quarterback's strengths to their advantage. Maybe you know how to do those things better than anybody else. But then there's also the evaluation side. Can you pick the guy who you can turn into a superstar? That, to me, is a different skill set. And maybe Shanahan and Lynch and the 49ers in general, maybe they're not as good at that aspect of the job than, say, being able to take a raw quarterback and turn them into something serviceable. So I look at this and say, you'd like to think with one of these three quarterbacks, it should be able to work out in some way. Certainly the tools are there. You've got some great skill players who you should be able to rely upon. But, you also invested a lot for the Trey Lance experiment to work. And barring a trade, that's a lot to invest into a quarterback who may not pan out. Not to mention, then you're going to Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold. And to me, even though we're dealing with a small sample size with Purdy, I think there's an obvious ceiling there where he's not going to be an MVP in the National Football League, but there's definitely an obvious ceiling as far as how much potential he really has.
They went all in for Trey Lance. That doesn't seem like it's working. I do think they probably had something in Brock Purdy, and the, injury is unfortunate. Or maybe it's just as simple as those quarterbacks just don't have enough talent to turn them around into being good quarterbacks. It's really all puzzling, and it's one of those where I'm not invested. I lean fade the Niners this season, but I'm actually really interested to see how this whole situation pans out, because hopefully Purdy's arm will get better as time goes on. Still like a month till the season starts.